morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's show on AM 1320 and streaming live at WFHR.com. We also welcome our buddy Jesse from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media, and the reason why he is here, it's our monthly visit with the Wood County Sheriff's Department. Wood County Sheriff Thomas Reichert is here, and he's brought along a special guest, so we'll say good morning to Wood County Sheriff and let him do the introduction. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. You'll have to excuse me. I'm going to be leaving the show at about 10:30 to go out and feed my sled dogs.
Okay. We got more snow now than we had all winter.
Wow, that's crazy.
It is nuts.
It is really crazy. I know Sean Becker and I were talking this morning, and he's lamenting snowmobile.
I know.
And he was lamenting the fact of all the snow we have now, and it's when all the trails are closed and they have no mechanism really to go snowmobiling now. So
yeah, this would have been the perfect snow for snowmobiling.
It probably would have been in December. It would have been
perfect.
It would have been perfect. But special guest this morning, Andy Simon from our department. Andy is currently a general investigator for us. For several years, he was our drug investigator, and it's kind of a special day for Andy today. It's Andy is a newly. He has served already as an appointed town supervisor in Grand Rapids, but yesterday he was elected to his own term.
That's right.
And,
I mentioned that.
He's also a birthday boy this morning.
Oh, so this is your birthday gift to him? Force him on the radio.
And I told him at 9:45 that he was coming on the radio.
Yeah, you like doing
that. The usual thing.
Yeah, you did. You did your
birthday surprise. I checked with his captain. What's Andy Simon doing this morning? And he goes, "Oh, I think he's going on the radio with you."
So I'll have to make sure and thank him for that.
And so I rudely interrupted him while he was on a phone call at the courthouse and asked him. I kind of interrupted. I said, "Can you just talk to me for a second? And I go, "Can you come on the radio with me in 15 minutes?" And the look on his face was priceless. It was like a strained smile. Yes.
Sure, I'd love to do that. So, what are his responsibilities at the Sheriff's Department besides being a birthday boy and now a town supervisor? Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Well, it makes me, first of all, in regard to the town supervisor thing, it makes me, I take great satisfaction. I'm really proud of guys that are working at the Sheriff's Department that take that step and to go to further their public service and going into elected office. I know, Andy is a great example of that. We have a couple people that have declared that they're going to run for my position from the department. And so, I take a lot of pride in the fact that people that have worked for me and have been with me for several years do that, and they take that step for public service, because I still believe a lot of times it seems like in recent years public service and elected positions have gotten a bad rap, like dirty politicians and all that. I choose to think of those positions more in the terms of like JFK did, where public service is a high calling, and it's something that is very, very noble and important. So it really makes me happy that we have guys like Andy that go out there, put themselves out there. How tough is that? You're literally like putting yourself forward and saying, okay, take your best shot. If you got something you're going to say about me, do it. Or if you've got some criticism or whatever, you're opening yourself up to things in our current culture that we have.
But I also think what's good about it is the fact that it makes our law enforcement personnel makes the rest of us realize you're citizens too.
Absolutely.
You're citizens. You care about your communities, and you care about issues. And I think it brings a different perspective, an important perspective, just like a working class person who serves, or a business person who serves, or educator who serves. You need all those different perspectives, and I think it's good to have that variety.
And you really do. And I had the opportunity yesterday afternoon to have to chat with Andy for a few minutes about about his community and his hopes for it and his ideas for it, and wow, that's just so important, I think, to get those ideas with younger people and younger people who are greatly experienced, as is the case with Andy, and putting them in positions to direct public policy and to make. Okay, so you got a gripe about something that your town supervisor or your alderman are doing, then give them suggestions and help them to what do you want your community to be. And Andy has a really nice plan that we had talked about yesterday in terms of what he thinks is important and what he thinks is good for his community, which I agree with. And I think that was I applaud him doing what he's doing, putting himself out there.
I want to get to Andy. What made you? I mean, being a law enforcement professional is hard enough. The hours you folks work sometimes. And then to take on the responsibility of serving on a town board, and we all know that that's not a 9-5 job. You can get calls at your home at any time where people are going, hey, my garbage wasn't picked up, or what are we doing about this road, or whatever. And it's usually the small stuff that gets the people the angriest.
This is true. Yep, this is true.
So what got you feeling like, hey, I want to get in on this?
Yep. Well, a lot of it just has got to do with my background and kind of where I come from. I grew up in this area. I've always been very attached to local community politics and watching the ongoings. I used to work for the Grand Rapids Police Department, and that was initially where I got my exposure to law enforcement as a whole. When I was in high school, deciding my career path, making decisions about what I wanted to do. It was kind of like, junior, senior year, pressure's on, where am I going to go with some things? And I had some different paths that I was looking at taking my life. One of them was getting into computers and things like that. I really enjoyed technology. Another one was law enforcement, and I like public service. And I wanted a job that I could get out and get in the community and go out and interact with people and try to serve the communities and work as a really more of a community-oriented type environment. And when I got into law enforcement, that was the transition of what law enforcement was becoming. Community-oriented policing environment where the police are part of the community and they're just members of the community that are out there working with the community to try to make our community safe and a happy, safe environment for us to raise our families and live. And I wanted to do that. I got involved with the Explorer program in Grand Rapids for their police department at the time, which was a program that would allow young individuals not sure about what they could do, were going to do, to explore a career field. And Grand Rapids at the time had an Explorer program. I got involved in that. We did some volunteer things with that. They used to do the Toys for Needy Children in the Christmas time and different things throughout the year where we'd volunteer. And then I had the opportunity to do ride-alongs and just participate in some of the functions of the police department. And during that time, I got to look at how things were done and what was going on there with the town. And just that was my first exposure to some small-town municipal government. And I saw how much of an impact a small-town government has potentially to its residents. Throughout my career in law enforcement, I always kind of had that urge to someday, when I became more experienced, serve in that aspect. The opportunity presented itself this last year. Kathy Elf had left the board. She moved out of the town, and I kind of saw an opportunity to apply for the appointment. And knowing full well that I had some interest in this for a better part of my life, felt that I had gained the experience and really my public safety background in working with law enforcement, in interacting with the community members, I felt gave me kind of the tools, I guess you could say, to do some of those things. So that I got involved with that, and fortunately I was lucky enough to be appointed to the board, and then now recently win the election. So that's kind of my path and why I wanted to do it. And I don't have any major agenda items. I just really want to maintain a high level of public safety and make sure that our town residents are safe, secure, and can be afforded a great place to live.
Okay, so that kind of answers my question. What do you think you bring to the board? What issues or what kind of, because of your law enforcement expertise, what do you think you can help them do that they might not be able to do because of you have that law enforcement background?
I think there's a lot to learn, too.
Sure.
Definitely coming on the board, there's a lot of aspects of public service and especially supervisory on the board that law enforcement didn't give me experience in. But I'm learning a lot of those things. But the one thing that I think I do bring to the table is just kind of a pulse on the variety and diversity of the community and some of the community needs as it comes to the public safety things. Because we deal with that every day, day in and day out. Being able to kind of have a diverse experience over the years, not only just in Wood County, but also Grand Rapids, and understanding some of the community needs around here in that diverse environment, public safety-wise. There's a lot of other aspects that I'm definitely learning. And
yeah, sure. But one of the things that all the communities around here and all the law enforcement professionals are talking about is our drug problem, which is no different than anybody else, other communities, but everybody. I just had last week we did an update with the Drug Task Force, and we talked about drug court. We had the state director and we had the public defender here talking about drug court. But so when you hear, when civilians or your fellow town board members go, what are we going to do about this? You can bring some that to the table. You can also get together with other communities and bring your expertise to. I see that as a benefit.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a huge issue right now.
Yep, it is, and I think we're getting to that point now where we're doing a lot in that area, and I think we got a lot of things going, and I think we need to start kind of letting the programs that we have running right now take effect and really start to look at some end game, where we start seeing some changes in those things. Because I do think we're doing a lot in that area, really as a community as a whole, and also there's a lot of facets and a lot of things contributing to that, and I think we're hopefully going to start seeing some successes in that.
What's your specialty or your responsibility, your special responsibilities with the sheriff's department? When you're not helping out your constituency.
Yeah. Right now, I'm assigned as a general investigator, so I work on a variety of crimes that can be reported to our department. So initially, our deputies of our department will respond to calls for service, get information on initial crimes or things that are occurring in our communities, and when the deputy comes across something that's like, all right, this is going to require more work than what we can be putting into it, I want to pass this along to somebody who's got more time to really focus in on this and work harder on this, then we get assigned those cases through our command staff then to work on these specific cases. So I get a variety of different things I work on. Everything from burglaries to assaults to thefts to you name it can come across my desk. But prior to doing this, I was working in the drug area specifically for several years. So I'm just kind of coming out of that into the general crime.
But you can bring that perspective, and I'm sure you hear, well, boy, things are really going downhill in this area. The crime is just exploding, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The post-apocalyptic world has arrived. When you hear that kind of talk, now you're going to be wearing two hats when you hear that kind of talk. A law enforcement professional, plus you work for the taxpayers of Grand Rapids. What do you say to folks?
Well, I think a lot of times, it ebbs and flows. I mean, we see increases in crimes, and then we see this ebbs and flows things as things go across, and sometimes we can look at it a little differently. I look at it as, we definitely have increases in crimes in specific areas and specific places. Right now, I think we're doing pretty well. We have times that we have increased crime, but at the same time, I think we're combating it fairly well. I do associate a lot of that stuff with some of the drug issues we've seen, especially with the methamphetamine use. We definitely can correspond some thievery to that type of stuff, and we do see that. But it is something that we're working diligently on, and I think we're making some progress.
We're going to be opening up the phone lines, and Sheriff, you wanted to give away some more of the coins. Why don't you describe those? We're going to give away 3 coins today.
Certainly. I neglected to bring them, but I'll bring them over the noon hour today. What the coins that we're giving away are called challenge coins, and basically commemorate the sheriff's department and my time as sheriff. They are really actually beautiful gold coins.
They are
kind of a collector type piece, and I'm going to try to bring in three of them for all the shows that we have left together. So
Okay.
I'm quite frankly, I'm honored that people will have these, and as a kind of as a token to remember my times as sheriff and to think about the sheriff's department in a good way.
Okay. Why don't you gentlemen put on a headset, one of those headsets, and we have our first caller of the morning, and we'll see if they would like one of these coins as well, but we'll let them have their question for you before we ask them that question. Good morning. You're on the Morning Magazine with the Sheriff and Andy Simon.
Good morning, Carl. This is Siegel Jim calling. Sheriff, it sounds like we got 3 more opportunities to say thank you for the job you've done. Thank you for offering the challenge coin, Carl. I've been out snow blowing, and I've not had a chance to catch the full half hour, but I did want to express a thank you. And as I listened last week on drugs, and as I listen here, the young man whose name I didn't catch.
Andy Simon.
Andy Simon, thank you, Carl. He used a word that almost set me off, and the sheriff will have a smile on his face. He almost, in describing some of his thoughts, used the word community organizer. And with that statement, I'll stop and say, please, the school system, our superintendent, I think would agree we need more civics, and we need a little more of what I'll call the Baltimore Catechism, where the individual takes responsibility, and we need a lot less government. You all enjoy winter. Over and out.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah. Okay. But I think, when we were talking about community policing, we were talking about police officers becoming involved in their community.
Yep.
And actually, that's an old-fashioned virtue. I can remember as a child, my dad knowing local police officers in Wisconsin Rapids by name, by first name.
I agree.
That's Officer so-and-so. And my dad taught me, don't be afraid, follow their instructions, do what they tell you to do, but they're there to help. They're here to serve. And the man on the beat walking the street, he knew the neighbor, he knew the businesses, he knew the owners, he knew who lived here.
Well, conceptually, I think that an old school approach to law enforcement is the best approach. Jim and I, who was just on the phone, have had many conversations about that. He calls me several times a week, and we visit about different things, and kind of wax nostalgically about our Catholic upbringing, and the idea that everyone in a community has a place, and I think that in a community such as ours, the law enforcement officer should play a prominent role, in terms of role models, in terms of how they are presented to the community, how they treat the community, which is the very reason why several years ago I had instituted the idea within our department about being basically kind to people. Not being short with them when we have contacts with them, and treating people as we would want to be treated. The idea that a police officer is some sort of robotic enforcer of laws, which is the trend that I think we saw for many years. That a law enforcement officer was somewhat
Like a robot.
removed and aloof from people that they serve. I think is just counterproductive and exactly the opposite of what it should be. And involving officers being involved in their community is going to do nothing but improve the community. And and it's immeasurable. It's immeasurable how you can't systematically put a measure on the impact of a police officer talking to a 8-year-old kid that's thinking about throwing a rock and breaking a window, and talking to him about not doing things like that. What does that prevent? It prevents a lot more than a window being broken. It changes sometimes the entire trajectory of the child's path. So folks doing stuff, guys in our department doing things like Andy going on a town board, or some of our other guys doing things with local organizations, trying to help people, feeding people, getting clothes for people that are poor. Those are all things that I envision, and that I've tried to make our department be more a part of. And I really think that's the right thing for us to do.
And as a Lutheran Christian, that's what the Bible tells us to do. And we're supposed to be helping one another. Serving. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're supposed to be the servant. And so your view, when you are involved as a law enforcement professional, say you're patrolling an area, and the families are in that area, and you know what's going on, doesn't that make your job more effective?
Oh, absolutely. Law enforcement officer, if there's a law enforcement out there that gets into this job thinking that they are going to be successful themselves, they will not be. We are only successful in solving crimes and doing the responsibilities that are tasked to us by working with the community. The community solves our cases, not us. We put the pieces together. We work with the community to try to fit everything together to try to solve cases and work through things. But at the end of the day, we have to have a very strong relationship with the community and have to have the trust of the community, and have to have a strong working relationship with them to get through what we need to do and what we're tasked to do.
And that's where crime prevention comes in.
Mm-hmm.
If we go back to the old neighborhood policy of neighbors helping neighbors, in which I saw James and I were paying tribute, we both saw a lot of people helping other people yesterday because people were getting stuck and people were out snow blowing other people's driveways or help. That's what we need more of, is to know, hey, my neighbor, okay, you're going to be away for the weekend, okay, we'll keep an eye on, and if I see something, I'm going to call Andy because he patrols this area.
And if something happens, the neighbors that see things or see that suspicious vehicle or see something that gives us a lead or a tip to follow up on, likely those are the people that are going to provide us the information that's going to help us solve the case. And without working with those people, we wouldn't be able to.
And Carl, the whole thing, it isn't just like random acts of kindness. It follows through to even policy decisions that we make. When Andy was drug investigator, I had spoke with him about this. We made a conscious decision that we were going to put Narcan in all of our squad cars. We're the first department in our area to do so. People talk about what we're doing to combat the drug issue. We talked a few minutes ago about it. But the issue is, what are you doing? Are you trying to do something positive? We put Narcan in our cars, the first agency in Wood County to do so. Unfortunately, there are still some agencies in Wood County that don't do that, and I don't understand why they don't. People want to talk about how many people have been killed from drug use, from using heroin. Just this last month, because of the progressive policies that we've done, and I would venture to say the kind policies that we've done, we had 2 Narcan saves just this last month, where Narcan being available to the officers saved people's lives.
And the Attorney General of Wisconsin, who is a conservative Republican, has endorsed the use of Narcan and is encouraging law enforcement agencies to do this.
It's so frustrating when you have, all too often, unfortunately, for just political reasons, like people misinterpreting or trying to misconstrue words that in my case, that I would say about what our department is doing to combat drug use. Some things have gotten back to me where people are saying, well, they're not doing anything, and criticizing things that I've actually said on your show.
Really?
going that far. And, well, I challenge anyone to say, show me someone that's done better than what we have, in terms of addressing this issue. We've put people in places to do the right things, and we've acted in a manner that's responsible and moral to our community, and done things that have been, again, I would say, kind. We came up with the money to get Narcan into all of our officers' hands. To sit and blow wind politically about, they're irresponsible, or they're doing something that is, I do something more. I challenge someone to tell me that they have a better plan. It's pretty easy to sit back and criticize. It's pretty hard to come forward with a plan and say, okay, we're going to do A, B, and C, and do that in a responsible manner.
And some people, their idea to solution is lock them up and let them die.
And that's never going to work. We can't lock them up and let them die. We can't. I think one thing that everybody agrees in law enforcement is that you can't arrest your way out of a situation.
I've heard that from, I don't know, a million different people from across the spectrum who are in law enforcement.
It's just, you just can't do it. And particularly, in our case, we don't have a new jail facility. We've made do with what we've had, and we've acted, dare I say, responsible in extending the life of our jail, at least for the next 7 to 8 years. And, to suggest that there's some alternative way to do this, while being responsible to the taxpayers, while not like increasing people's taxes tenfold. Let's hear your plan. Don't just blow smoke about it.
Okay. With that, on that happy note, we'll take our first break here on the Morning Magazine.
Good morning and welcome back to The Morning Magazine, presented by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. It's time for part 2. Once again, here's Carl Hilke.
Thanks again, Jerry, and welcome back, everybody, to today's show on AM 1320 and streaming live at WFHR.com. We also welcome our friend Jesse from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. They're recording this in high definition for viewing on their website or on your local public access channel, depending on which system you're on, whether it be Solaris or Spectrum, Charter Spectrum. So be looking for that. By the way, Jesse, you guys got a very good website. I was using it during the election campaign, and you guys, it's a nice site. And I've happened to see you do a good job making me look good for TV with this face for radio. But we have these 3 challenge coins.
Yes.
And it commemorates, they're beautiful. And the next 3 people that call, and they have a question for, we have Andy Simon, who is, for those of you in Grand Rapids, he won an election. Technically, I guess it would be re-election since you had been appointed. You now
was listed as an incumbent, but this is my first official election.
And you're on the town board. And it's an interesting combination, being a law enforcement professional while also serving where you live. Mm-hmm. What do you think, how does that affect your law enforcement career?
Well, I guess I don't think it has a whole lot to do with it. I think it gives me a broader scope as to some issues that might be out there. It gives me more diversity and just my knowledge of the community, public, how government works, and things like that, as I'm serving in my capacity here at the Sheriff's Department. But I kind of keep them divided. My responsibility when I'm at work here at the Sheriff's Department, my duties here are here, and then on my off time I then will partake in all the activities of the town board.
What do you do on your real off time?
Well, a lot of things. I'm definitely an avid outdoors person. Very, very much so into physical fitness and
I could tell.
And things.
The arms give you away.
I work out a lot at the YMCA and very appreciative of that.
We just had those folks on the air yesterday.
Did you? Okay. I teach some fitness classes there throughout the week in the morning as well. Interacting with the folks there that come there. They're a great group of people, and it's a great place to meet new friends and just interact with people there too as well. It's people that are definitely very, very of sound mind and very easy to get along with and easy to communicate with.
Now, there is the first evidence that this man is a good politician, because the true answer to that question is whatever his new bride wife tells him to do is what he does.
And you might as well say hi to your lovely bride.
I'm not sure if she's listening, but if she is, hi today. It's her birthday coming up this weekend.
Her name?
Morgan.
Yeah, I know that. We've
Former Miss Wisconsin Rapids.
I know, and we've had her on with the here during the Visit Wisconsin Rapids segment.
Yeah.
So you guys, how's the new home?
Good.
Okay.
Very good.
Yeah.
So
she was telling me yeah, Carl, I'm going to be spackling this weekend. What? Morgan, we love you.
we're ready for the landscape, so we did.
Well, you got the landscape. Mother Nature just did it. Got a winter scene.
Yeah.
Beautiful for Christmas.
No kidding. we put our lawn in last year. We did some stuff. We're picking plants. She's kind of got plans for some plants and things she wants to put in, and I'm glad we're not putting a lawn in this year. That was quite the work. So
I'll ask the Sheriff the same question. From your perspective, when you have someone like Andy, regardless of the type of community involvement, you kind of touched on it, but how do you think it benefits their law enforcement career by being involved in the community?
Well, I come to the idea that it's a very positive thing based on my own experience. In the early '90s, I did 4 years as an alderman here in Wisconsin Rapids, which some people remember, but a lot of people I think have probably forgotten. And I probably learned more about government and the way government works in those 4 years than I did in all the times during my master's degree work and everything else. Those 4 years were really something that I'll never forget, and they were a wonderful experience. From I didn't necessarily make the connection at the time to theories that I would have right now in terms of it's a responsibility and an obligation for public servants to be decent and kind to people, but folks would call me up, a typical complaint you had mentioned, their garbage would get missed or something. And I remember back then, my dad and I went halves on an old pickup truck. I'd take that truck and I would go and I'd pick the garbage up. If someone called and had garbage, I didn't want to put it in the trunk of my car at the time or anything. So I'd go pick up that old truck and I'd go pick up their garbage and take it over and get rid of it. It was exposing. It was a great exposure to service. It was a great exposure to humbling oneself and to do things and to act in service of another person. So I love it that these guys are doing this sort of thing, and I think that it does so many things. I think it makes us better law enforcement officers. It makes us better people. It makes us better members of the community when we do things that just aren't for ourselves or maybe directly for our families, and it goes and helps another person. I see nothing but positive, like in terms of character and personality coming from that.
I'm going to ask you guys this: with all the concerns we have now, especially about shooting incidents in schools and everything.
There's another one yesterday.
Yeah. The shooting. How is that affecting law enforcement, community law enforcement? People are scared, and they're saying, well, the way to solve the problem is arm everybody. And that's one extreme. Other extreme, well, we're going to confiscate everything. Well, that's not. I mean, for law enforcement, when this debate affects how you folks function. This debate that we're having in our country right now about gun violence. I'd like to hear law enforcement's take on gun violence.
I think we're becoming somewhat anesthetized to it. It's just another clip on a news show at night that there was a school shooting, or in the case yesterday, I think it was Yahoo or Facebook or something.
It was YouTube.
Where the incident was, and we
had here in Wisconsin Rapids the incident at the bakery.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's dangerous that that's becoming such commonplace for us. And again, as I always have been on your show, I'm like extraordinarily moderate person in terms of what I think would be the right approach. What I think is dangerous is that we all get the mindset that, oh, well, this is just the way life is supposed to be, because that certainly I don't think is I think that's dangerous, to be honest with you. I think that we need to expect more from our society than to accept gun violence. Now, when you look at it from a historical perspective, the most effective time that I have seen, in the studies that I have done, was during the 1990s, when there was a limited ban on assault rifles. President Clinton had passed a law that made assault weapons and certain ammunition illegal. And during that period of time, statistically, what it has showed was that those type of incidents had gone down. Now, that there's a lot of reasons that happened, and there's a lot of, and I'm oversimplifying it for purposes of our discussion today. But I think that the solution to this lies somewhere in between arming a 12-year-old and taking everybody's gun away. Yeah. The solution to that is somewhere in the middle, where we do things like we make people that maybe shouldn't be having guns, we make it more difficult for them to get, and having perhaps having a limited ban on things like we did in the 1990s that was so effective. Doing those type of things, but again in a measured response. And I think what doing that is, it does a number of things. It implements policy, but it also hopefully brings together the folks that want to arm the 12-year-olds and the people that want to return to the Stone Age of not having guns.
Well, Andy, you mentioned you're an outdoors. Mm-hmm. So you're a hunter?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you're feeling. I mean, there's the purists that say, no, we can't.
Yep. There's a lot of guns out there, and mm-hmm. that's the thing. I mean, we can cut them off at a certain point and go in that way. And I agree with Sheriff Reichert. I think there's a middle ground where we need to start looking at policy changes potentially in the future, but I'm definitely not somebody that, I'm definitely not a heavy on the gun, take them away kind of thing. There's too many guns out there.
You couldn't do it.
You couldn't do it. Yeah. And most people, not all these cases, but a lot of times when people, in my experience, when people commit crimes with weapons, they don't care how they obtained them. So whether they obtained them through a legal method or an illegal method does not necessarily matter to them.
Good point.
When they get those weapons. And we see these gun violence incidents occurring. We also see incidents of where knives are used and other weapons.
Sure.
There's a lot of other weapons. We had somebody use a vehicle that just hit a bunch of people with a vehicle. I think you got to go a little further upstream on these things and look at, the mental health aspects, the things like that, and recognizing these things as things start to progress. And I think here again, I'm going to go back to this is all of us need to work together on this type of thing. Law enforcement is not going to fix this problem either. This is it starts with education. It starts with recognizing mental health concerns and working through some of those issues, and maybe educating people also how to respond should some situation like this arise, to try to help people protect themselves.
That's a good point. But you mentioned mental health, and I think we're going to take a quick break. But one of the things we have the mental health. There's such a stigma with getting treatment, and I think we got. My theory is we have to get rid of this stigma. And I want to touch on that, because if you have a broken leg, you go get treatment. Mm-hmm. You have sinus problems, you go get treatment. You have head problems, and somehow it's weird if you go get treatment. And I think we got to get rid of that. And I know Healthy People Wood County and the Drug Task Force have been working on that issue. I'd like to get your gentleman's feel on that. We're going to take a quick break and then wrap up this edition of the Morning Magazine. At AM 1320, welcome back to the Morning Magazine, and we have a caller on the line, and I want to give this person on the line first because this is the first time to call, so you're on the air. What your call or comment? Hello?
Hello.
Hi, you're on.
I would like to, first of all, thank Sheriff Reichert for all of his years of service to Wood County.
Well,
I
thank
think
you
you've
so
done
much.
a wonderful job, brought
you so
new
much.
perspectives, and also I think your staff.
Thank you. So I'll pass that along to them.
And then the other thing, and I've been hanging on for a little while. so I don't-
First off, let me ask you a question, ma'am, first. Would you
Yes.
like one of these challenge coins? They're a beautiful
Oh, I would be honored.
Okay. What's your name?
Okay, it's Ruth.
Okay, Ruth, we're going to put one aside for you. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, go ahead to your other comment.
Okay, and listening, with all the shootings and other, things that go on, I think that, and I don't know, this may have already been done, we need to focus more on mental health starting in kindergarten. As soon as kids are in school, if we could have some kind of a mental health program, start small, just like they learn their ABCs, but start looking at that and even maybe have some kind of programs or staff that are, experts in that area.
Okay.
Just like anything else, like sports or whatever,
Right,
you have a
right.
mental health class.
Make it part of the curriculum.
Yes, that would be something that I would suggest. I think a lot of these things that are going on are directly, if you trace it back to a long time ago, not just today. Like you mentioned, the shootings and so forth, most recently. I think that's something that had been going on for, with that person for a long time.
I think you're right. I think that this does begin at a very young age, and that's a very constructive suggestion.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's just one of my thoughts.
And that might go along with my idea and what I've heard from professionals of getting rid of the stigma of getting help if you have mental health problems.
Yes, that's true because if I have a cold, and go to the doctor, okay, that's acceptable. But if I tell my friend, they said, "Oh, you went to the doctor. What was wrong?" And I said, "Well, I think I'm having a little bit of mental health problems." They go, "Oh, what?"
Or I'm suffering depression and I needed to go get some. Yeah, I mean, we got to get rid of that.
Yes, that's right.
Totally agree.
So I thank you very much for the program, and I will hang up and listen some more.
You can stop by the station then, Ruth, and pick up
Yes,
that coin.
I will. And thank you again very much, Tom, and
you're so welcome.
all your staff.
Thank you so much, Ruth.
Thank you.
Yes, bye-bye.
When you folks are in the field working, do you ever refer someone? I mean, how is law enforcement being trained or updated in the whole issue of mental health?
Well, I think the short answer is that we refer people all the time. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's a very common disposition for a case where we, in varying measures. And some people it might just be a conversation that you're having with them, where you would suggest to them that they need help and that they need to maybe talk to someone and make referrals to them as to people that can get them in contact with the right folks. Sometimes when we respond to more to a higher threat type things, we might take that into our own hands and make sure that the person gets at least touch base with the help.
That gets into a question of the law. People have been wondering about this. Well, if someone's been talking to their friends, boy, I really like to shoot up that office, or I'd like to, and people are going, can't law enforcement, if someone reports that to law enforcement, can't they get that person at least in some type of protective custody so they don't do that until it's ascertained their mental health?
Right. We certainly try.
You can do that.
But under certain circumstances.
Okay, that's what I want to get into.
It isn't really like a bright line that you can say do A, B, and C, and you.
I know this is a tough issue.
Right, it's huge. It isn't really like a bright line where we can say if someone does A, B, and C, they're going to be taken into custody and forced to receive at least an evaluation by someone. It's a much more. It's a much more subjective process, maybe than what some folks might believe. Crisis intervention is involved in it. There's a number of safeguards, in terms of people from social services and crisis intervention that do evaluations on this to see where this person would be most appropriately positioned.
Okay. So there is a process. What about you on the street, for the officer on the street?
Yep, absolutely. I mean, we if people encounter those situations, they absolutely need to get law enforcement involved. We will help facilitate, analyzing that situation, determining what the facts are, and try to determine what the best way is that we can provide help.
Okay, so let me give a situation. I hear somebody talking crazy. I'm going, this is a little scary. This is weird. I should not keep that to myself. No. I should make the call to 911 and say, listen, here's a situation. I think you folks need to investigate. Is it correct?
Yep, and then we're going to follow up on that. We'll make contact with the individual. We'll investigate it and determine, what's actually happening, and we will then, all dependent upon the circumstances of what information we get during that investigation, we will make referrals or all the way up to maybe taking that person into some type of protective custody and turning them over to a mental health facility. Very much so, a broad variety of things will take place, and we'll work with other public services and resources to help facilitate that.
And this goes back to what we talked about, Andy, the point you made at the beginning. You can't solve crime or prevent it without our help. And here's a perfect example. We have to stop ignoring, he's just nuts. He's just having a bad day, or he or she. Mm-hmm. We need to go, and law enforcement, in turn, needs to take those seriously when they get those calls. And it sounds to me, the Wood County Sheriff's Department, you take that very seriously.
We do. No, there's so much involved with it. There's so much involved in mental health that I don't think any of us really can speak definitively about it. It's a subjective area.
Which is why it's so difficult legally.
It's so difficult, and that's why it's so hard. There has to be safeguards against taking people into custody. We just can't have a police state where people are going to be taken.
That's right.
Into custody.
Come with me. You're talking a little weird.
That was attempted in around 1940 in Germany. But it's a very complicated matter. But it's something that we certainly try to stay on top of and work with other agencies as much as we can.
And to wrap things up this morning, gentlemen, very good discussion. But how were things yesterday? I didn't get with this snowstorm. Did people forget their winter driving skills? I saw some people, a white vehicle in heavy snow driving without its lights on. And I know now you can pull them over and write them up under the new state law. But I also saw some crazy things with lane changes. It's like once the weather gets nice, we forget everything. How was it on the road for you guys yesterday? Were you busy?
I didn't notice.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad.
I didn't look back to see what we had. I shouldn't say it wasn't bad. I didn't look back to see what it looked like. I probably should have. I haven't heard anecdotally from anyone that it was a terrible day on the road.
Nothing real bad. I did drive quite a bit on the roads yesterday, and it was definitely slippery. It seemed as though this snowfall we got yesterday seemed to be different than other ones that we've got.
Well, yeah, because it was wet, that heavy wet.
And then it got cooler, and then we had kind of more heavier snow on top of it. So that was a little bit rough. But then again, I same thing. I haven't heard of anything real major.
Okay.
Maybe we could get 2 calls quick for those last 2 coins. Unless Jim Stelmach wants one.
Yeah. Well, I'll put one on because I got a minute and a half, and then we got to go. Real quick, anything you need to get the word out to the public coming up, or anything that they need to be aware of, either of you gentlemen?
I think we're going to have some kind of nasty weather, and
we're going to continue. I guess.
I would caution people not to forget their winter driving skills. We're almost there, people. It's almost spring. Just hang in there. I always call these snowfalls opening day snowfalls because of when the Brewers played at County Stadium.
Oh yeah.
Days would get sometimes it would get snowed out.
Yeah. Well, I call this Mother Nature's example of an April Fool's joke. Well, Andy, I want to wish you a happy birthday, my friend.
Thank you.
And I'm sure Morgan has something special planned for you. So, and congratulations, and thank you for your service. And this was an interesting conversation about, law enforcement and the community, and how we both need to interact. Quite honestly, I think the thing I've learned today, we both need to interact more in a civil way than less.
Totally agree.
Okay.
It's an absolute pleasure being here this morning.
Okay, take care, guys.
Thank you.
And with that, we're going to wrap up today's edition of the Morning Magazine.